We're not just tracing words, we're tracing the heartbeat of a culture that has endured for thousands of years, a language that has whispered secrets, commanded empires, and sung the poetry of generations. This is the story of the Chinese language, Part 2, and our adventure begins at its most ancient roots. Imagine, if you will, a world shrouded in the mist of deep antiquity, a land where mighty rivers carved pathways through vast plains, and the earliest settlements huddled beneath towering skies. How did human voices, first shaped in simple sounds, evolve into the complex, beautiful intricacies of a language that would come to define one of the world's most enduring civilizations? How did the very first words of China take shape? Not just in spoken breath, but etched into the very fabric of existence, telling tales of kings, gods, and daily life. In this episode, we're going back, far back, to the dawn of writing itself. We'll explore a time when language was still finding its form, when symbols were born from observation, and when the spoken word was first given a tangible, lasting presence. This is where the tale truly begins, with the fascinating, sometimes mysterious, origins of Chinese in ancient China, a story waiting to be uncovered. Pottery from 8,000 years ago had numerous symbols on it. This was the very beginning of the Chinese script. There is evidence of a fairly developed civilization, with the cities emerging around 4000 BCE. The Shang Dynasty is said to have existed 2700 to 1600 BCE. Some questioned whether the Shang Dynasty ever really existed. The doubt comes about just as it does with verbal histories around the world. As they are passed down, a storyteller may make amends that they think would make the story more interesting. Add in hundreds of years of this approach, and the likely scenario of a true story is that it has become a tale of supernatural abilities. To this day, China is full of mythology from this time. The Shang Dynasty, 1600 to 1046 BCE, is China's first historical dynasty, or one that was written about comprehensively as it existed. This is when the true urban areas emerged. Life was separated into 4 levels of social hierarchy. One was privileged aristocrats, who were the rulers. The other 3 were under the control of aristocrats, who included artisans, warriors, and peasants. Aristocrats, of course, lived a life of luxury. Artisans and warriors enjoyed a better life than the peasants. Peasants leased land, giving a portion of their crops to the rulers. Peasants lived in simple dwellings with dirt floors. It was a time of great instability, as the Shang were often at war with their neighbors. It was during this period that ancient Chinese script fully emerged. That is, in what is referred to as the oracle bones, used mostly from 1250 to 1046 BCE. This was from a process known as divination, or from the belief that it was possible to contact long-deceased ancestors for answers to questions or concerns. A diviner was a person who created the communication. They would do so by taking pieces of an ox's shoulder blades or a turtle's underside shell. They would heat the bones and shells, then interpret the cracks caused by the heat. Their interpretations would be written on the bones or shells. Some of the characters were simple, such as a circle representing a sun, a crescent representing a moon, a jagged shape a mountain, or a stick figure a person. Others were more complicated, with over 5,000 different characters used. 13,000 of these bones exist in collections today, with over 130,000 characters written on them. One of the questions that was frequently asked was what sacrifices needed to be made to appease the gods. Bronze inscriptions were another recording device used from close to the same time until several hundred years later. The inscriptions were usually drawn on a clay tablet, then baked on bronze. These might be several things, including a tribute to an ancestor, oaths, legal agreements, wishes for descendants, records, royal grants or appointments, and others. About 12,000 inscriptions exist. Bamboo books were also used during this time. The use of examinations for obtaining a civil service position in China goes back at least to the Han Dynasty in 165 BCE. Throughout the dynasties, this became more and more important. This then existed throughout the Chinese dynasties until their fall in the year 1912. To some extent, they still exist today. What is known as 4 books and 5 classics has been the core of this. These are all associated with Confucius, who died in 479 BCE. These were either written, commented, or edited by Confucius or one of his disciples. Commentary has over time been added to these, becoming part of the work. It is thought that the 5 classics were chosen by Confucius, all existing before his life. Each of the 5 classics is a collection of text. Both the Book of Songs and I Ching are thought to be the oldest of these, both from the Zhou dynasty between the 11th and 7th centuries BCE. The Book of Songs, that gave linguistic rhymes to reconstruct Old Chinese pronunciations. The poems spoke of life under the Zhou dynasty, its culture, class structure, personal stories, history of the time, and other subjects. I Ching is a consulting guide of the universe and is still used today in East Asia. It is considered one of the world's oldest books. It was often used in the West during the 18th to 20th centuries to understand East Asian thought. Through the random placing of sticks, or, for the last couple thousand years, dice, it is thought to tell what is happening in one's life and how to react to it. This was strongly used in at least Confucianism, Taoism, and Buddhism. Confucius said if he had an extra 50 years, he would dedicate them to I Ching. Even over the last few hundred years, many well-known philosophers and writers have been fascinated with I Ching, allowing its teachings to influence them, allowing it to guide their creations. The binary system in computers, a numbering system of zeros and ones, comes from I Ching. Life in the Zhou dynasty had a substantial improvement in the quality of life. Among many things, there was a large decrease in human sacrifice and slavery. Spring and Autumn Annals were another of the 5 classics. It is the earliest historical writing that was organized chronologically. This is about the state of Wu, around present-day Shandong, on the Chinese Pacific coast, from 722 to 481 BCE. The Zhou dynasty lasted 1046 to 256 BCE, the longest-lasting dynasty in Chinese history. A part of this is known in Chinese history as the Spring and Autumn period, from 770 to 481 BCE. When the Zhou dynasty began to weaken, warfare was common, and towards the end, chaos ensued. When continuous warfare resulted, along with this chaos, it was a period known as the Warring States period, 475 to 221 BCE. 6 other states had emerged in what used to be part of the Zhou dynasty. These 7 states, with Zhou, were in constant warfare. In the midst of this was a cultural brilliance like none other in history. known as the School of 100 Thoughts. I will now try to describe the times. The kingdom had shattered. The mandate of heaven trembled. The kings no longer ruled. Only warlords, only steel. Castles rose, then fell. Brothers turned against brothers. And in the silence between battles, long ago, when kings lost their crowns and heavens fell silent, the political landscape fractured. A question echoed. How do we live in a world without order? From ruined altars and wandering courts, voices began to rise, not in chorus, but in contention. Some called for virtue, teach the rights, honor the ancestors, reform the heart. Others called for law, strike swiftly, obey without question. Fear brings peace. One man whispered of rivers and wind. Step back, let the world unfold. The Tao does not shout. Another carved out logic from language, splitting truth from illusion with a blade of thought. Love all equally, said Mozi. Conquer through stillness, said Sun Tzu. Punish to preserve, said Han Feizi. Perfect the self, to perfect the state, said Confucius. These were the 100 schools of thoughts, a storm of minds. From chaos, they forged vision. From ruin, they wrote the blueprints of China's soul. Their voices still echo in classrooms, in temples, in ink, in law. The period is nicely portrayed by the commentary of Zoa in a 30-chapter work covering this period of 722 to 468 BCE. For centuries, it was the primary source that educated the Chinese about their history. It is known as a clear description of the time and not written cryptically as others were. Probably written in the 4th century BCE. It includes in-depth accounts of battles, the relationship between the kingdoms. It defines cultures of the time. Some have compared it to the Greek Iliad, as it contains drama of the time as well. It is written in third person as a moral teaching, stating that often disaster is brought upon a person through the fault of that person. Many of the tales tell of feats of courage, the ability to strategize, negotiate, or solve complex problems, to act decisively and seize the moment. Chinese believed, until recently, and I suspect there are still places that still believe, that the origins of the Chinese and their culture come from what is known as the three sovereigns, named Fuxi, Shennong, and the Yellow Emperor. There is some inconsistency in which of the three created what, but they have been revered as demigods, with each in the lineage of the three having less godlike powers than the preceding. Fuxi is often portrayed entwined with his sister, both having a snake-like body and human heads. Fuxi, his sister, and his wife are credited with creating humanity. Fuxi is acknowledged as the father of civilization, giving the world many of the basics of civilization. His mythical reign was 2852 to 2738 BCE. Fuxi was worshipped throughout imperial China, and emperors claimed legitimacy of their thrones by claiming descent from him. He is still a big cultural phenomenon, but is now considered fictional by most Chinese. Shennong, the second emperor, who ruled 2737 to 2638 BCE, is often described as having horns, and in some descriptions, the head of a bull. Under his guidance, humans began to settle in and build societies. He invented the concept and tools needed for agriculture. He is credited as the founder of Chinese herbal medicine. He is also credited with being the original discoverer of tea. The Yellow Emperor is the third sovereign, having ruled, it is said, 2637 to 2598 BCE. He is known for defeating rival chieftains, uniting China, and reaching spiritual perfection. Other creations attributed to him are more developed civilization, political order, clothing, silk production, mathematics, and numerous inventions. The Yellow Emperor is often seen as the first human emperor, not a god. The Yellow Emperor was believed to be true well into the 20th century, now viewed as an important cultural relic. The esoteric scripture of the Yellow Emperor is a foundational text in traditional Chinese medicine, TCM. The text is written as a dialogue between the Yellow Emperor and his doctor. Chinese medicine essentially has 5 concepts. Number 1 is the balance of qi. Qi is considered the life force that flows through everything. Number 2 is the balance of yin and yang. It is thought that every part of the body and life contains both. Health is a constant adaptive harmony between them. Number 3, the balance between the 5 elements. Those are wood, fire, earth, metal, and water. Number 4 is organ therapy. Organs are thought to govern both physical and emotional functions. Tools to manipulate these forces include acupuncture, herbal formulas, cupping, medical massage, qigong, and tai chi. Number 5 is regulating meridians, which are the rivers through which qi and blood flow. The esoteric scripture of the Yellow Emperor was first put together in written form during the Warring States period, well over 2,000 years ago. Deep-rooted in Chinese history is a genre that is carried forward to this day in all kinds of storytelling. In the forgotten folds of China's ancient roads, where mist clings to pine and silence walks like a monk, there drifted lone figures, cloaked not in titles, but in honor, not in gold, but in vow. They were called Youxia, those who bowed to no king, but justice, and served no cause, but compassion. They carried swords, but sharper still were their hearts. They passed through villages like wind in the reeds, leaving behind no name, only a tale. One gave his rice to a starving child. Another defied a governor to save the innocent. A third vanished into the mountains after killing a tyrant, not for vengeance, but for peace. They were not saints. They drank wine, loved fiercely, broke laws, but they lived by a deeper code, the fire of righteousness. When emperors wrote laws in ink, the Youxia wrote justice in blood. The first recorded stories of Youxia are found in the Warring States period. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great day, and I hope to see you in the next video.